Neurons are specialized cells of the nervous system that transmit signals throughout the body. You may already know that neurons can do many different things, from sensing external and internal stimuli to processing information and also directing muscle actions. But do you know how far a neuron can send a signal, or how neurons actually work at the cellular level? In this lesson, we'll take a look at neurons and how they work. The most unique and important structures of a neuron are the long extensions that extend out from the cell body. There are two types of extensions, dendrites and axons. Dendrites are extensions of neurons that receive signals and conduct them toward the cell body. Axons are extensions of neurons that conduct signals away from the cell body to other cells. Both axons and dendrites can extend far away from the cell body, and some human axons can reach lengths of over 3 feet, but that's nothing compared to giraffes, which have axons as long as 15 feet. Okay, so neurons have dendrites and axons that can extend far from the cell body and relay signals to and from other cells. But how do they actually relay these signals? For this, let's take a closer look at a section of a neuron's dendrite. When the dendrite is not transmitting a signal, it is said to be in its resting state. In this state, the inside of the cell has a net negative charge, and the outside of the cell has a net positive charge. The membrane is said to be polarized because negative and positive charges exist on opposite sides. The polarized state of the membrane is actively maintained by the neuron through the use of sodium-potassium pumps. These sodium-potassium pumps pump 3 positively charged sodium ions out of the cell for every 2 positively charged potassium ions it pumps into the cell. Each cycle of the pump increases the polarization a little more. In addition, potassium ions leak back across the membrane and out of the cell by diffusion, which again creates more negative charge inside the cell and more positive charge outside the cell. When a neuron receives a signal, sodium channels in the membrane are opened and allow a localized influx of positive sodium ions into the cell, which causes depolarization, or a reduction of the difference in charge across the membrane. The localized depolarization also triggers nearby sodium channels to open up and depolarize the membrane nearby, which then causes more sodium channels to open up further away and depolarize the membrane there, and so a chain reaction is started. Depolarization occurs in a wave across the membrane, starting at the dendrite that received the signal, moving toward the cell body, across the cell body, and then away from the cell down the axon. You can think of depolarization as being like people standing up to do the wave in a football stadium. When the wave reaches people who are seated, it triggers them to stand up, which then triggers the people next to them to stand up, and so on, continuing the wave through the stands. And much like the people in the stands who sit back down, the membrane repolarizes by closing the sodium channels and firing up the sodium-potassium pumps to reestablish the difference in charge across the membrane, and the neuron is ready to pass along another signal. So what happens when the signal reaches the end of the axon? How does the neuron pass the signal along to another cell? At the ends of axons, the axon usually splits into several smaller branches.